Here, here. John McDonnell. John McDonnell.
Through you, Chair, can I address the Minister? Just read the room. Read the room.
Here, here.
The only other times when it's been as packed as this in recent period when I've been here has been the two-child limit and on the welfare benefits. I don't want to see our government have another embarrassing U-turn like this. The reason we're here is because every one of us will have a case that if this goes through will be absolutely tragic. Families have settled, sold their accommodation and everything in their home, worked hard, delivered everything asked of them, and we're going to deny them and their children the right to the future that they hope for. And I just say, if this goes ahead, every one of us will report social care collapsing in our constituents. Can I also remind people that as many of these workers have been past experience who delivered us through COVID as well, some of them sacrificed their lives as well. This is just unjust. And I think the Minister needs to recognise that, take the message back to those who are developing our strategy as a government, say this isn't the route to go down. Can I just say this one final point? I'd rather not, because other people need to come in. Let me just make this point about parliamentary process. If this isn't to be done through primary legislation where we can have a debate and amend the legislation, if it's to be done via a statutory instrument, it needs to be the double affirmative process so that we can have a debate and offer the opportunity of amendments. Because otherwise, I think the government's going to run into a scale of opposition that's seen on other issues, frighten people, undermine our support completely unnecessarily. If there's issues around immigration we have to deal with, and we did it through the colleges, if people can remember when there were bogus colleges, we did it through proper legal process and prosecution. If there's abuses in this system, let's address the abuses. But don't harm people in this way as a result of that.
Charlie Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Your chairmanship, and I thank the honourable member for bringing this important debate. I met with a constituent this morning, Petra, who has been in the country for 3.5 years. She works in the care sector. She works extremely long hours, which are not in her control. Sometimes she is loaded with hours 6 days straight from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes she gets no work at all. When she talks to her employer, they say, well, you know, you and the rest of your team, you are on visas, and if you report us and we go out of business, then you're all going to be leaving the UK. And this is just this enormous class of indentured servitude that we are creating.
On that point, will you give me very briefly?
Certainly.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. Giving way. Those were the words exactly of my constituent Arshad Khan this weekend when he came to see me at my constituency surgery, that indentured servitude point that we've made about visa licences and how these people actually operate. And there's been many points made here, so I just wanted to add strength really to his argument that this is a serious point about people living with the power of their employers over their head and being held sometimes on poor rates of pay, on poor shift patterns, and they can't challenge it because their employer has all the power in the relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. This is obviously cruel, and this moving of the goalposts makes it miles crueler. And to your point, sir, about reading the room, I really hope that the Minister is reading this room, because I think the country is up in arms about this, and we should not allow this to go through. And I really ask the Minister to reconsider.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve in your chairship today. I want to start by saying that controlling our borders is a basic function of the state. The government inherited open borders and is now undertaking the serious work required to fix them. And I do welcome the Minister's efforts, but I do think there are some tweaks we can make. I've spoken on this issue several times before, particularly about the BNO Hong Kong visa holders, and I'm grateful that the government is committed to keeping the 5-year route for those affected. Today, though, I'm going to focus on how these proposed changes will affect families, especially those I've been speaking with in the Morley Indian community. Now, around 30% of the families I've spoken with are due to receive their ILR within the next 6 months, so they are understandably very anxious about what these changes mean for them. The vast majority are high earners or work in key sectors. Many of the families I spoke to, many of the people I spoke to, earn well over £50,000. They don't claim benefits and they contribute significantly to our economy and to our public services through their taxes. Now, it's because at least one member of these families is earning a high salary that their spouses and partners have been able to move into part-time work, often so that they can help raise the children and care for them. Now, as a result of this situation and the proposed changes, that they are now very worried they will not meet the new criteria at the same time as their partners. They came to this country under one set of rules, which allowed dependents to move to the UK with them, and now they are very concerned at the prospect of being unable to qualify together and being broken up entirely. So my first question to the Minister is, has the government considered putting in place strong transitional arrangements that do not punish families who are already here, contributing far more to the UK than they take out? Or would the government consider that where a family, not an individual, meets the salary threshold, they can qualify for ILR together? And just one more point with the extremely limited time available to me. Many of the Morley Indian families I spoke with came over here knowing that while they were waiting for ILR, they'd pay international university fees, and they accepted that those were the rules. However, under these changes, they now might be waiting a lot longer, but worse still, they're going to find that if they do go back to India, they're no longer considered home students for the fees purposes there. So they find themselves trapped in a situation where they can't pay the fees here and they can't pay the fees back at home. I would ask, very briefly.
I thank my honourable friend for the speech he's making. Does he agree with me that while the government seeks that these proposals increase integration, that actually we risk, by limiting ILR beyond 10 years, we're actually going to reduce integration in the type of instances that he outlined, and that risks undermining the integration that I see in workplaces, churches and community groups in Sunderland that I represent?
Thank him for his point. I completely understand where he's coming from, and the people that I was speaking about in my point just before he made his intervention, they're going to find themselves trapped and effectively shut out from university education altogether, even though that they are already integrated into this country. So, Sir Edward, I just urge the government to consider the full impact of the implementation of these changes for people who are already here, already working, already contributing more than they ever take out, who came in good faith, and who have followed every rule we have set for them.
What about Adam?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a real honour.
Good job.
To say about this debate, and hence it's very difficult for me to know where to begin, but I will do by thanking the petitioners, and also for this MP at least, and indeed many that I can see in this room, and cabinet ministers and shadow cabinet ministers, and even a prime minister. I am what I am because of when I came to this country in the manner this country treated me. I have two parents who couldn't speak a word of English, yet the support that we received means that now we have a dynasty of academics, entrepreneurs, professionals, and even a parliamentarian. I know that might be enough for a policy for people to make sure that never happens again. But we have a sense of belonging to this land, even though we are far away from our ancestral land. This does not happen by chance. It happens by design and can only happen in a country that promotes integration based on values of decency, respect, and contribution, rather than contempt, impatient, and transactional values. It works when a society respects values that should be woven into its fabric. When we value our care workers, our frontline health workers, our teachers, our transport workers, not because of how much money they earn, not because of their salaries, but because they are a foundation of our societies.
Very briefly, the point he makes, a lot of people who've come here have been branded the Boris wave. But one of my Nigerian constituents told me that they came here under the COVID wave to care for people in this country.
I agree with the gentleman, thank you. This policy also flies in the face of the Prime Minister's pre-election pledge. It is a betrayal of his sixth pledge, an immigration system, we were told, rooted in compassion and dignity. This is a betrayal felt, for me, and I'm sure for many, most sharply when it is an Asian Home Secretary, someone whose own journey reflects migration promise, now advances policies that punishes people just like her family and mine once were. And apart from being morally bankrupt, it also flies in the face of fiscal responsibility. We are told this is all about cost, that migration is a burden, yet even those claims collapse under scrutiny. The widely cited £234 billion ILR emergency figure has been discredited even by its own authors. Correct the errors and migration delivers a net fiscal gain of £100 billion. Sorry, in the interest of time. Security results in integration, insecurity results in chaos, and not to mention serious possibility of exploitation by employers, the indentured labourer point that has been made by my colleagues before. So when did modern Britain become such a transactional country? If we truly want an integrated Britain, the last thing we want is longer waiting times, uncertainty, and a broken promise. What we need is certainty, 5 years maximum with fast decisions, and a real acknowledgement that migration, when done with respect and fairness, strengthens a country, not weakens it.
Melanie on.
Thank you very much, It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. Proposed changes to ILR and the consultation on earned settlement have far-reaching consequences. It is essential that they are delivered with fairness and compassion. I do support the government's mission to restore control and confidence in the immigration system, including the clear objective of reducing net migration and ensuring the rules are properly enforced. Public trust depends on a system that is coherent, that is consistent, and that works. But I do think that it's worth remembering that the people who have come to the UK, they've come through legitimate means. They've come to fill the Brexit work gap, to support our public services and to contribute well to our society. And I have to reflect the real anxiety that I'm hearing in Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes from people who are already here, already working, already paying tax, and who entered the system in good faith under the existing framework. They've built their lives around their rules, these rules, our rules, and it'd be wrong if the goalposts were moved halfway through the match. I want to add the voice of one constituent, Victor Olabumoya, a care worker who described living under what he called visa fear. He told me that he went to work every day fearful that a single mistake could cost him not just his job but his immigration status, and that managers repeatedly reminded him that his visa depended upon them, as we've heard from others today. And in Victor's own words, he says, "You cannot give what you do not have. People who are treated without dignity struggle to give dignity." And that testimony matters because it goes to the heart of what fairness looks like in practice. If we want a system that commands confidence, we must not create incentives for silence or exploitation and instability in our essential services. I think change for future arrivals probably can be just about explained, but retrospective change for those who are already here, often working in our essential public services, really risks undermining workforce stability and basic fairness. And my constituency, the issue of immigration is a topic of interest, to say the least. There's no point in pretending it's not.
Absolutely.
But it really isn't about those who've come on a proper visa, through a proper scheme. The concerns about employer from the government, the concerns about employer over-reliance on overseas labour is not the fault of these individuals. They're here because we asked them to come and help. So as this consultation progresses, I'm asking for careful consideration of transitional protections or differentiated arrangements for existing workers, so their contribution is properly recognised, their integration is supported, and their concerns are reflected in the final policy.
Hear, hear. Mike Martin.
Oh, I stumbled a lot.
Your chairship, Sir Edwards. On Saturday, I met with 200 members of the Paddock Wood Hong Kong community. Now, Sir Edwards, you're probably wondering why 200 people would give up their early Saturday evenings to see me. But they were worried, and they were worried for themselves and for their families. They came to voice a fear that their pathway for settlement had narrowed. They came because the conditions under which they uprooted their lives in Hong Kong and came to Britain were being changed. And Chair, I was deeply disappointed because they came on a promise made by the British government, and that is a promise that is potentially now being rewritten. Yeah. let's go into some detail. I'm grateful that the Hong Kong B&O route is going to continue to allow settlement within 5 years. But there have been two changes, and one of them is about language and one of them is about earnings thresholds. So on language, many of the B&O families came as 3 generational units. And in a 3 generational unit, you're of course going to have people who are quite elderly. And so for those people, quite obviously, to achieve a much higher standard of English proficiency is much more difficult. Honourable members who've ever learnt a language in their lives will know that it's much easier when you're 20 than when you are 80. So what are we to do? If you're 80 and you fail a higher language requirement, will you get sent back to Hong Kong when the rest of your family remains? We need more detail. The government needs to look at this in more detail. And to the income requirements, well, as I said, we had these 3 generational family units coming, and often, 70% of B&O visa holders are degree educated, and they are working often in jobs that's significantly below their professional level and standing. But I won't take any interventions because there are so many people seeking to get in. But what this means, this combination of high-skilled individuals, yet 3 generational families, is that, quite rightly, not everyone in that family is going to work. So what about the carers, the part-time workers, the elderly, the students? If one studies at university and you are not earning, do you need to meet the income threshold? There is a complete lack of clarity. When I attended the Chinese New Year celebrations last year in Paddock Wood, and these were held jointly with the congregation of St Andrew's Church in Paddock Wood, I saw firsthand just how deeply that community enriches our community, and how that was reciprocated from the native Paddock Wood community. And so I just urge the Minister, in conclusion, the British government has made a promise. The British government should stick to its promises, and I urge them to reconsider.
Hold on. Brian Leishman.
Good afternoon, Sir Edward. St Mark's Gospel says, "Thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself." With the political discourse of today largely focusing on blaming immigration for the societal ills our country faces, that commandment is sadly not in fashion. The government's proposal for pathways to settlement introduces a new 10-year baseline for people, including those granted refugee status, with time added or taken away for circumstances seen as favourable or unfavourable to the Home Secretary of the day. If someone was to arrive via legal routes, then this adds 20 years to this baseline, meaning 30 years before they could apply for citizenship. Bear in mind that arriving by an irregular route is almost unavoidable due to the virtual non-existence of safe and legal routes. It really must be acknowledged that claiming asylum is a human right. Claiming asylum is not an abuse of any system. And proposals that differentiate between regular and irregular arrivals are unequal at their very core. Differentiating would create an inferior class of people whose protection needs might well be internationally recognised, but their long-term status is being kept deliberately precarious. In a Scottish context, the Scottish Refugee Council have said that in Glasgow last year there were over 2,000 children from refugee families in temporary accommodation. Scottish local authorities are already at breaking point with over a decade of underfunding, over £1 billion these last 10 years from the SNP Scottish Government. And we all know that children growing up in poverty has a huge long-term impact on life chances, health outcomes, our local and national economies, and on the condition and functionality of our public services. So, I say to the Minister, Labour must do better than copying the right-wing parties and demonising immigrants and asylum seekers. This country doesn't need us or want us to be some diluted version of reform. Whether we are talking about immigration, welfare, education, the environment, industry, or all the rest of it, ultimately, the question is always the same. What kind of society do we want to live in? One that looks after the most disadvantaged, vulnerable and destitute, or looks to scapegoat and point the finger at these people for the political decisions that have led to growing poverty and inequality. As a socialist and as someone that believes in the commandment of love thy neighbour, then I know what I want my government to do.
Ian Solemn.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair this afternoon, and I'm grateful to the petitioners for bringing this important matter to Parliament, and to the Honourable Member for Folkestone and Hythe for leading the debate off. The government is right to say that settlement should be earned through contribution. I think few would dispute that principle. The consultation documents point to a system that contradicts those stated goals on this. I'm sure the Minister will say that today that no final decisions have been made, but the direction of travel is clear. A 10-year baseline for most routes, 15 years for care workers, as many members have mentioned today, with complex reductions based largely on salary. That fundamentally misunderstands what settlement is for. The key I will give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. He makes a very good point about salaries, and that income levels are not necessarily a good predictor of usefulness to society and economic contribution. We've heard that very clearly about social workers, but does he agree with me that in high-tech sectors such as space, biotech, robotics, etc., we need global talent, and only by pooling those talents will we succeed, and that's why we should not be putting these barriers to indefinite leave to remain in place?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and indeed I will cite an example of that from my own constituency shortly. I think the key distinction to make is between selection and settlement. Our visa system is the selection mechanism. We judge whether someone has the skills we need, meets thresholds, fills a genuine vacancy. Settlement is about whether people can actually plan a future here and commit to staying. 5 years of working, paying taxes, learning English, staying out of trouble, that is earning it. Extending to 10 or 15 years doesn't raise standards. It just makes Britain unattractive to exactly the people our visa system says that we should be welcoming. Let me give a concrete example. I have a constituent who came in on the high potential individual visa, a route explicitly designed to attract the world's best talent. He's a skilled engineer. He chose the UK based on the clear 5-year pathway. He tells me, had a 10-year route been the policy, he would never have come. That's the reality when we're competing for talent. Now, the government also claims the changes will improve integration, but uncertainty is the enemy of integration. Someone who knows they can settle after 5 years will invest fully in their future here. Someone facing 10 to 15 years of uncertainty keeps their options open elsewhere. Another constituent who's been in touch is an orthopaedic surgeon, a professional serving our NHS. He has 3 children in British schools. He tells me that if these rules change, he cannot wait for another 6 years. He will leave, and our NHS and our country will lose him and his talent. The moral stakes are clearest when I hear from Hong Kongers in my constituency. While they may be exempted from the extension to 10 years, the consultation leaves unclear what earned settlement actually means for them. Higher English requirements, income thresholds, whether any exemption is permanent. That's for people who fled political persecution based on our word to them. When we create uncertainty for people who follow the rules and contribute, it damages trust in British commitments. By all means, use the visa system for selection, and we can have many separate debates on that. But settlement terms should enable the people we've decided to welcome to actually commit to staying. The current direction undermines both our own economic interests and our reputation for fairness, and I'd urge the government to change